All right, so I haven't made a video in a while on this channel, but the other day I was kind of thinking about how much I've played first-person shooters over the years. I've put in like 6 years of playing these games on PC, and then like 8 years of console before that. A lot of time, and a lot of that, especially the time on PC, has been practicing, experimenting, doing a lot of stuff to kind of improve my gameplay for different, games that I was playing. And because of all this time I've put in, I kind of acquired a lot of kind of really weird specific knowledge on this topic. So I figured, why don't I just make a video series and kind of go over different aspects of this topic so that somebody who finds these videos, it might help them along and make the process of getting good at whatever game they're trying to get good at a little bit easier and a little less time consuming and less full of headaches. So as a disclaimer, I'm not a professional. I have not played in any big money tournaments or anything like that. I'm just someone who is pretty comfortable saying that they're well above average at first person shooters. So if you want to see some professional level players that I kind of learned from watching over the years and sometimes even receive coaching from, I'll leave them in the description. But other than that, I'm going to start the video. So this first video is just going to be about aim and movement, kind of your bread and butter when it comes to first-person shooters, your main mechanical skill. Aim being, your control of your mouse, just basically all your mouse movements, and movement being mainly what you do with your keyboard. So I guess the first thing I'll say about aim and movement is they have to work together. Like, you can't have really good aim and shitty movement and play well, basically. Like, you can't focus on one or the other. They have to work together. Your movement should be helping your aim. Any top player you see in any first-person shooter, they're going to have both of these skills pretty locked down. A good example of this would be Bolo from Rainbow Six Siege. He's a professional, like a world champion. His movement and aim both are like extremely good. Like they work together really well, and they pretty much always have since he kind of started uploading YouTube videos and doing streams on Rainbow Six Siege like years and years ago. But if Bolo was he didn't have his leaning or any other movement mechanics down, and all he had was just aim, mouse control basically, he wouldn't be near as good as he is today. Only focusing on like your aim with your mouse or just your movement or crazy movement tech or dodging, it's only going to get you so far. And if you only focus on one of these, you'll probably end up kind of stumbling over yourself when you're actually trying to play a game. And I'm kind of guilty of this. When I first started playing first person shooters, I used to really focus on my mouse aim. I didn't really think movement was that important. I kind of was just like, whatever. I didn't really think about it. But when I go back and watch like old videos of me playing, it's like some of the shit I do with my keyboard like just completely fucks my aim. Like when I would have just gotten the kill normally if I wasn't just being an idiot with my keyboard. So I'm going to kind of go over both of these aspects, but just remember that it requires focusing on both of them to really be proficient at your mechanical skill when it comes to first person shooters. All right, so for the first part here, I'm just going to kind of go over like your raw mouse aim, your mouse control, everything you're kind of doing with your mouse. And I'm just going to go over different mistakes that I've made along the way of like trying to get better aim, and maybe some of my opinions on different training methods and whatnot. So the first thing I'll say is that it's kind of a big waste of time trying to find the perfect mouse sensitivity. There really is no perfect sensitivity. In my opinion, I wouldn't go anything below 20 centimeters per 360. If you don't know what that means, it just means that if your mouse sensitivity is at 20 centimeters per 360 for whatever game you're playing, it means that you move your mouse 20 centimeters in one direction across your mouse pad, and the view model in game does a full 360 degrees. It's a universal way of measuring mouse sensitivity across different games, because every game uses a different number for sensitivity and whatever bullshit. So I wouldn't go below 20 for most people, just because that's pretty fast for most games. Like, you're just gonna have a lot of extra speed for no reason. And I wouldn't go above 50 centimeters again for most people. You might want to go above 50 centimeters. You might want to go below 20 centimeters. But for most people, you're going to be between like 20 and 50, just depending on what game you're playing. And that's another thing, is you should change your sensitivity kind of based on the game and based on how you feel. Like, this idea of, muscle memory that people like to throw around, and like, oh, if I change my sense and if I don't use the same sense on every game, I'm gonna get all fucked up and I'm not gonna be able to, practice my aim very well or whatever. It's kind of a lie. Like, I used to think about this a lot when I first started. Like, oh, I need to keep my sense the same on every single game, or my aim's gonna get really shitty, and I'm never gonna learn. And that's kind of just not true. Mouse control is something that you kind of just learn. It's not dependent on whatever sense you're using and how much time you put on that specific sensitivity. If you're a new player, I would just find a professional player that you like watching their gameplay or whatever, and just, try their sensitivity, try other people's sensitivity just to start out with, and then see where, if you want to increase it or decrease it. Personally, I sit on probably about 36 centimeters per 360, depending on the game. That's just kind of an estimate. I really haven't looked at it in a while. If you want to know what centimeter per 360 you're using for whatever game you're playing, I'm going to link a tool down below that you can use to not only change your sensitivities and set them to be the same on each game, but also know what, centimeter per 360 that you're already using right now for whatever game you're playing. But the next thing I'm going to talk about is aim training. I've had a lot of experience with aim training. I've probably put in about 300 to 400 hours total over the course of me playing, 6 years on PC, which for some people that's not a lot, but other people might be looking at that and being like, holy shit, this guy is a fucking crazy person. But, it was me experimenting and figuring out what I thought would be useful to kind of develop my skills. And that being said, I don't think it's useless, but I would say a lot of people who use aim training tools aren't really getting that much out of it, and a lot of the scenarios they do really don't help for anything like in-game. And if you just want to play aim trainers and you just like grinding scores on aim trainers, there's nothing wrong with that. Do what you think is fun. But if you're trying to use it to get better at a certain game, try to be mindful about, what you're actually training, and try to figure out if there's any scenarios that actually are helping you versus just wasting your time. From my own experience, when I first started, I aim trained a lot. I did a lot of stupid shit. And then, maybe I dropped it for a few months or whatever, came back to it for playing some other game. But I don't really do that much of it anymore. I really just don't find that it helps that much, to be honest. It really just trains your mouse control, and it doesn't integrate a lot of movement, with that, which is a really big part of aiming in like an actual game. So I guess if you're really new, and you feel like it helps you warm up, or you're just really not used to using a mouse, aim training might be really useful for like a couple weeks or a month, just sitting on there doing like 20 minutes to like an hour at the most per day of just, doing different scenarios or whatever. It might help you a little bit when you're new, but I'd say if you're pretty experienced using a mouse, you feel pretty comfortable with it, don't waste your time too much, in my opinion. But that being said, if you want to do some scenarios that I think are pretty helpful, most of them are, I would say, tracking focused, because as I'll go over later, I think tracking is kind of the most important component of aim. So I'll link those down below. All right. So I've had to record this like 3 fucking times because I'm apparently just terrible at recording things with OBS. But so I'm in Quake Live right here, and I just have a bot in the server with me, just to kind of show your different kind of fundamental types of aim. I'm not really going to use a lot of movement because I'm just trying to show like mouse control, right? Even though movement's very important as far as aiming, I'm just going to kind of show like the mouse control portion of it. So the main kinds of aim you're going to do in a first-person shooter it's really split into 2 categories. It's tracking and flicking. Tracking is just going to be like your ability to follow a target smoothly and then get back onto target quickly if you start missing. It's more useful in like longer time to kill games, like maybe like Overwatch or Quake, for example. Any longer time to kill game where it takes a while to kill your opponent, tracking is going to be pretty much number 1. And then flicking is the other type of aim, and that's just kind of like a quick motion, a quick movement of the hand or arm to move to like a different spot, right? Like if I see him and he's off target, bam, I flick onto him, right? Let me go closer so you can kind of see it. So I do that, flick, right? It's really quick, and it's good for that kind of skill. Really good for like shorter time to kill games, or if you're using like a sniper or something like that. Guns that don't require a lot of bullets, or you just need to get on target really quickly, right? You're gonna want to flick. It's kind of it's a basic movement that you need to know, but I would say it's a lot easier to learn than something like tracking. So I'll go over tracking first. Your tracking is going to be kind of split into, I guess, 2 types of tracking. You got kind of predictive tracking, right? So predictive tracking is like, let's see if he takes this. Okay, well, I can't show you. Anyway, let's say if he took this little lift here, right? That bot. I know what that's going to look like. It's the same speed every time. I know what he's going to do, right? He can't like just strafe a bunch midair. He can't do anything crazy while he's midair on this lift, right? I know the game, so I know what's going to happen. Predictive tracking, watch, he might actually do it here. Never mind, I'm just getting fucking baited. So predictive tracking is just your ability to kind of smoothly follow something that's very predictable, right? Like if somebody's like, jumps off a building in your game, you kind of know what that's going to look like, right? You know the speed of them falling, right? Because you've played the game a lot. So that's really easy to follow. The only skill you have to have is just how smoothly can I move my hand to like follow that, right? Right? That was pretty easy right there. So I would say that's a lot easier to kind of learn, as long as you're just aware of it. Like all you have to do is just move your hand smoothly and just understand where the character model is going to go. The other type of tracking is going to be reactive tracking, and that's kind of your main type of tracking that you're going to do, especially if you're playing like longer time to kill games, right? So it's basically your ability to kind of stay on target while the target is strafing around and making directional changes. Essentially the form of this is going to be like trying to make smooth movements, right? Because the character model's moving across your screen pretty smoothly, right? So you're going to make really smooth movements, but as soon as you're off target, you want to kind of make a flick back onto target. So it's going to kind of look like this a little bit, if the guy's strafing back and forth, right? Because we don't have perfect reaction times. We're not robots. So you're going to be off target at some point. Unless you just completely read his movement, you just know where he's going to go, right? That happens sometimes, but most of the time you're going to be making little corrections constantly, and that's the kind of skill you just need to develop, right? So you just need to kind of, focus on being smooth, but then like adding a flick in there to get back on target once you're off target. That's like the main form of this, right? And then I would say another tip to just kind of develop this is learning to calm down. So like some people, this is very obvious, but like if you're really tense. If you're really tense, you're really nervous for some reason. Your ability to kind of read like your opponent's movement is going to be pretty hindered. Like you're going to be thinking about a whole bunch of other shit. You're not going to be thinking just about like, is he going right or left? Am I on target? Like the basic things, right? Uh, you're going to be having your brain crowded with a bunch of bullshit, and you're not going to track very well. So you need to learn to like focus and calm down whatever is making you nervous. Um, you just need to get over that, and eventually, I'll probably make like a kind of mental tips video at some point in this kind of series. But for right now, um, you just have to learn to calm down to kind of track better, I guess. Um, and then another tip would be learn to use your eyes. So like again, this might sound obvious, but to me, I didn't realize that I was doing it. Um, so you need to be looking at your target constantly, as long your ability to like focus your eyes on the target um, is kind of very important when you're trying to like track that target. Like if your eyes get off focus a lot and you start looking at other things or whatever, you're not going to track very well because you're not constantly reading the little movement cues or anything like that. You don't know where this guy's going to go. You don't know if you're on target or off target. So you need to like when you're tracking somebody, you need to be like fully focused on them, right? Your eyes should not come off of them as much as possible until you win, basically. Other than that, make sure you're not tensing up too much either. Make sure you're not tensing up because if you get like really tense, if I tense up my arm a bunch right here and I try to hit this guy, like I'm just gonna completely flex my arm here. So like, see how I'm like really going really crazy? Like my aim is shaking everywhere. Like I'm still kind of hitting him, but it's not very good, right? It's pretty bad. So you need to be able to move your hand or arm smoothly as much as you can. And to do that, you can't be constantly like keeping it really tense. You need to kind of relax a little bit. Relax your muscle. I'm not saying all tension is bad. Like you're gonna have some tension whenever you're playing, but if your arm is just fully tensed up, like you're not gonna, like it's gonna be hard to like move it around basically in like a manner that's like accurate, like that. Like you just can't. It's hard. So just kind of learn to like relax. And then moving on to flicking. So flicking, I would say, is a lot easier to develop because it only requires, one movement, right? It's just a quick, motion and then click, right? But a lot of people, I would say, struggle with speed. Either they're kind of afraid of speed, I guess, because they think it's going to make them like really inaccurate, or they just never really developed it. Either way, you want some speed whenever you're trying to flick to something. Like you want it to look pretty snappy, barring like any one frame flicks. You don't need to like one frame flick anything. You don't need it that fast. You just need it to be like fast enough where if the enemy is moving right and then he changes directions left, it doesn't make you miss because your flick was too slow when he was moving right. Like you want it to be quick enough that you don't miss because of that, right? Because the idea of flicking is like he's moving left. I know the distance between my crosshair and him, right? And so like I just flick to that spot really quickly and then click, right? Like that, or like that, right? I would say if you have trouble kind of developing like speed with this, the way I did it, I used to play a lot of Rainbow Six Siege, so I really focused on flicking a lot, even though I didn't, I guess, necessarily need to focus on it too much. Like I probably over focused on it a lot, but the way I did it kind of train like my speed and everything is I literally just sat and practiced like moving my crosshair between different angles, right? Like on the map. Like I would just sit there and constantly do this when I wasn't like actively like in a gunfight. And eventually it did make my flicking, you know, a little bit more accurate and a little bit faster because I was just um, constantly practicing that. It's gonna look really stupid when you're doing that, but it did help me. Like when I was first starting out, trying to like get the speed down and everything. And then I guess the other tip would just be, um, you know, learn to, I guess, use your eyes again. I'm going to kind of reiterate that. Like you should pretty much always be looking at the target before you hit like a flick. You know, unless there's like an edge case scenario where, you know, he came out of nowhere and he's on like the your kind of peripheral vision, you know, on like the edge of your screen, and you just need to quickly flick to him over there. Like you're not really looking at him, but you kind of know where the character model is because your peripheral vision. So you kind of do make a flick without looking at him, I guess. But most of the time, like you're gonna want to look at the target before you try and flick them. You're gonna be wanting to focus on that target for just a second, you know, like you need to give your brain enough time to like judge that distance essentially. So like that, right? Like that. Um, so like you can't just as soon as the guy comes onto screen just try and like do a wild ass flick without like giving yourself ample time to kind of for your brain to kind of make that calculation, and it's going to get faster over time. But if you just try and do like really quick flicks like as soon as he comes onto screen, you're probably just going to miss more often, and you know you don't want that. It's better to at least hit some shots than, you know, hit 1 out of 12 flicks and you know you happen to hit that one, you know, faster than the other guy hit you. You know, that's not going to be very successful, right? You'd rather hit like 8 out of 12, but maybe like a couple of them weren't, you know, fast enough, right? Yeah, I would say uh, just kind of focus on getting a little bit faster. You don't need to like one frame flick everything, but just make it quick enough so that you can quickly get onto target without him changing direction too much, you know? All right, and then moving on, I would say the next thing we're going to discuss is reaction time. A lot of people have kind of an obsession with reaction time, and I was a little bit like this too, definitely, when I first kind of got into PC games and trying to get better. You know, I thought reaction time was kind of everything, and it's important for aiming, like reaction time, but it's a lot more complex than I think people think it is. Um, like a lot of people think that if you just go on human benchmark and you're able to score, you know, 140 to 160 milliseconds, like your aim just should be absolutely godlike. That's not true. Like it's human benchmark is kind of a shitty way to um, kind of measure reaction time when it comes to video games, right? Because video games aren't just red to green all the time, right? They're not just a simple color change. Video games are very complex. You know, they require a lot more reading and a lot more visual cues to kind of react to things, right? You have to know a lot more. So, you know, when you're aiming, like reaction time depends a lot on your ability to pick up all of the on-screen info and make your decisions accordingly, right? And that's something that can be improved. That's not just genetic, like you're not set in stone for that skill, you know. That is something that can be improved. A lot of people think like reaction time is just completely genetic and like you just can't get over it. You know, if you're, you know, hitting a 300 millisecond human benchmark, you're just never going to get better. You're never going to have good aim. That's not true. A lot of it is trainable, right? And to prove that, I can tell you a story that when I first played human benchmark, like long ass time ago, right? I just wanted to see, you know, how good I would be at it when I first kind of started playing PC games. And I got on there and I hit like, I think like 250 to like 280 milliseconds my first go around, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm cooked. You know, I'm so cooked. Um, and so then I just like kind of focused on it super hard. Like I just was like super, you know, almost like insecure about this number. I was like, damn, like I'm really just genetically cooked. That wasn't true. First of all, I was way too in my head. I was thinking way too much when I was doing it. Um, once I just calmed down and just practiced, you know, my eyes and everything, it got used to the kind of red to green color change, that kind of stimulus. Um, you know, like I can get on there and hit like 100 and, you know, 40 to 160 milliseconds. And it's no problem. Like, you know, I've hit down into like the 130s and even 120s at certain points, not, you know, consistently, but like that's the deal. That's the thing I'm saying. Like it's kind of bullshit, you know, like uh professional players, like I watched a Siege professional the other day get on human benchmark and like pretty much scored like a consistent 160 milliseconds, which is really good. But like, to give you some perspective, like I've hit, you know, lower than that and sometimes consistently lower than that. Does that mean I'm better than this guy? Hell no. That guy would absolutely fucking destroy me in game, right? So, you know, why is that? It's because human benchmark is kind of stupid. Like, your games are not red to green, games are very complex. So, your ability to react in game um, is a very different skill than just trying to click red to green. I guess if you're wanting to improve your reaction time, you feel like your reaction time's bad. Um, the first thing you need to do is you need to calm down. You need to be mindful of like how crowded your brain is whenever you're playing. Like if you're in a very reaction time dependent scenario, like you're swinging some sort of angle, like you're going around the angle, you're looking for a guy to shoot, you know, because you know there's probably a guy somewhere around there. So you're just waiting to see that character model so you can make like a flick to it or whatever. Um, you need to focus on just clearing your head and only thinking about, and not even really thinking, but just like only having in your brain the idea of, is there a guy? Is there a guy? Is there a guy? And just flicking to that, you know, character model whenever you see it. I mean, it sounds easier than it is, but it's like you have to kind of train your brain to do this. You can't just constantly be thinking about a bunch of shit, like, you had stress at school or work, you had all this other shit. If you're wanting to react in game well, you can't be thinking about that. So you need to you need to learn to kind of control your brain, at least for a little bit while you're playing, you know, if you're in a really like reaction time dependent scenario. You got to learn to focus. But moving on from reaction time, I would say if you're wanting to improve like your mouse control, your aim, the main things that I would do is I would probably play games that require good aim, right? Like playing DPS on Overwatch, playing Quake, playing Counter-Strike, you know, games that are really, really aim dependent. But, you know, have fun. Like, if you don't enjoy those games, don't play them. Like, find a different way to practice, you know? But I will say playing games that require good aim will make your aim better. It's just how it works, you know? Like, if you're trying to get better at that game, your aim is just going to get better. You're going to figure out how to make your aim better. And then I would say number 2 is just focus on trying to track enemies well, and make micro corrections, because if you can make micro corrections when tracking, then you can also flick pretty well, probably, right? So just focus on being able to track enemies well. That's a really, really important skill when it comes to aiming. Number 3, I'd say, would be like try to learn to relax. Don't get too tense, and don't like get too serious about this. You know, like it's okay to be serious about improving, but don't let it like just ruin your day and like make your mood really shitty. Like having a good mood will do wonders for you when you're actually playing. Um, So like if having a good mood requires you to like kind of try stupid, dumb stuff while you're playing, like do really stupid pushes and do dumb stuff every now and then just to kind of keep it interesting, then do that. Like, don't get too focused on only playing the game as efficient as you possibly can. And then I'd say number 4, the last thing, record your gameplay. Recording your gameplay and watching it back later is so extremely helpful. I like, if you're focused on improvement, you should do this, like 100%. Figure out a way to like record your gameplay. I use OBS. You can use, there's like a built-in NVIDIA tool you can use if you have an NVIDIA card. And there's other like recording softwares that you can use. Record your gameplay, and then just kind of compare that gameplay to somebody's aim, you think is like really good, right? And that'll you'll be able to kind of figure out where your weaknesses are. Like you'll be able to see a lot more things that you do that aren't necessarily very efficient, or in good form or anything like that. So yeah, record your gameplay, watch it back. That'll give you a lot of information about where to improve on. All right, so moving on to movement. Movement is, again, like I said, very important when it comes to hitting more shots, and it should be very connected to your aim. You should always be using your movement to help your aim, right? You want to be hitting more shots, essentially. So your basic movement is just going to be like your strafing, right? Like if you're having like a little, like an aim duel with somebody, like you're both trying to like track each other or whatever, then your main tool to be able to track them better is going to be not only your mouse control, but your movement. Like, and I'll use an example here in a second, but again, you should think about using strafing to help your aim. It should be part of your aim. Like there is a literal concept known as strafe aim, and that is literally using the movement keys to aim. So I guess I'll kind of go over like strafe aim real quick in just a very simple manner. Like there's a guy that wrote like an entire document on like strafe aim and like how to use strafe aim, how to practice it. I'll leave that down below. I'm just gonna make like a very simple groundwork that you can kind of create for yourself and just kind of build off of. I would say whenever you're strafing like in a gunfight, you're probably going to be doing one of two things. You're either going to be mirroring the other opponent, or you're going to be anti-mirroring them. And what that means is like I'm just going to try and do this with just my keyboard. So like if they move left, I move left. If they move right, I move right, and it's kind of hard because he's not moving left or right a lot. Like if he moves left across my screen here, and then he starts moving right, then I go to the right, right? So you're following his movement with yours, right? And then the other type of movement would be anti-mirroring. So like that's kind of the opposite, right? Like if he moves left, then I go right, and you end up kind of moving in a circle around each other, right? Because that's just how it works. And both of these have like pros and cons. So essentially, if you're gonna mirror somebody, like it's gonna require less work on your mouse, right? You're gonna be aiming a lot less. Like you might, if they're strafing in one direction for a while, like you might only have to make like a quick flick to them and then just never touch your mouse again, right? Like you can just finish off that kill just with your keyboard. And just holding down mouse 1. So I'm going to try to aim as little as possible here. All right, so here's an example of mirroring, right? So he goes right, he goes right on my screen, I go right too, right? And I barely had to move my mouse. So that's kind of the thing. It's like if you want to kind of keep your mouse out of the equation, like you want to more rely on your movement to aim at somebody, then you kind of want to mirror them more. But if you want to do the opposite, and you think you have basically way better mouse aim than they do, then you're going to anti-mirror them, right? because that'll leverage more of your raw like mouse aim over theirs. So there's just trade-offs, right? There's just trade-offs to doing these two kind of basic strafe aim kind of forms. And there's plenty of more like intricate ways that you can get into this and like talk about strafe aim. And again, that document I left down below, that kind of gets into a lot of it, and it gets very, very specific. But I think, at least for me, I typically just try to focus on these two kind of concepts and just kind of build off of those, right? I'm gonna say, like, don't only mirror people and don't only anti-mirror people. Like, don't just do one or the other. Like, use them as you see fit, right? It should just be a tool, like kind of a tool in your belt, right? Something that you are aware of and you can use it to kind of make your aim better, right? Like if there's a really hard target on your screen to hit, like he's doing he's really, it's a really small target, moving really fast or something like that. You can like mirror him, right? You can mirror him and it'll take a lot less of your mouse precision to basically hit that target, and it might make it easier. And then like, let's say, you're like winning a gunfight and the guy you're shooting at starts kind of going around a corner to try and hide from you. Then you're going to be kind of anti-mirroring in a way to like constantly keep him on your screen. And I'll try to use an example, but so like an example of this, like if he starts going around this corner, I'm going to keep following him, right? I'm not just going to stay put, right? I'm kind of anti-mirroring him in a way, just to keep him on my screen. So that's like an example of anti-mirroring, and you can just also use it just in a straight up aim duel. Like if you feel like your mouse control and your raw mouse aim is just better than theirs, then you can utilize that to kind of just make them hit less and make you hit more. Because the deal when you just only do one of these, people are gonna catch on to that. Like especially in like really aim duel heavy kind of games, people are gonna be catching on to that, right? Like you if you're just constantly mirroring somebody, if they're like remotely paying attention, they're just gonna kind of know what you're gonna do. Like and then all of that reactive kind of tracking just turns into predictive tracking. They know what you're gonna do, so they just have to smoothly kind of follow your character around and just they know exactly when you're gonna strafe because it's whenever they're gonna strafe. So utilize these whenever it will help you, but don't just utilize them all the time or utilize one of them all the time. Mix it up, do different things, like add in little stutter steps whenever you're like mirroring somebody or anti-mirroring them. Add in little stutter steps. That'll really fuck people up. Do weird shit sometimes, as long as it doesn't hurt your aim too much. Like, don't do so much weird shit that like your aim is suffering because of it. Do enough that you can handle. Like, I'm kind of like doing a little stutter step there while also mirroring him, and that's like kind of what I'm talking about, because that can really throw off his aim. And because you know what you're going to do with your own keyboard, your aim's not going to really be thrown off that much. All right, and then the next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be dodging. So dodging is kind of like it's basically just moving with the intent to like not be hit by something, right? And I would say a lot of times when you're trying to like dodge things, it's going to be whenever you're at a disadvantage, like whenever the guy, you're at really low health or you haven't reloaded yet and there's a guy like pushing you around a corner or something, or he kind of catches you off guard. You're going to want to be, kind of dodging around, doing really, stupid shit, and just waiting until you have an opportunity to kind of shoot at him again. Or trying to get into cover, but strafing a bunch and trying to throw off his aim so he doesn't immediately kill you, right? Your dodging is you just trying not to get hit. So you're going to use that whenever you're kind of at a disadvantage in whatever gunfight, like somebody catches you off guard or whatever. It's a really good skill to have because it can kind of save you from certain bad situations you might encounter. You know, a lot of people, whenever they get caught off guard or whatever, they kind of freeze up, or like they're trying to reload or do whatever. They kind of just freeze up, and you don't want to do that. You want to keep moving as much as you can, because if you can do that, you might have thrown their aim off enough that it gave you time to reload or do whatever you needed to do, and then you can shoot them and potentially win that gunfight, even though they had all the advantage. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about dodging. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about like advanced kind of movement techs. So I'm just going to speak very generally about this. So like a lot of first-person shooters, they have, you know, movement kind of abilities or movement techs that were not necessarily intended, or maybe they were intended, but they're just hard to pull off. You know, they require a lot more timing of inputs and everything. You know, this can include like bunny hopping, like slide canceling from like Call of Duty. And there's a bunch of other random stuff from different games that are maybe not intended, but are in the game because, you know, the developers left them in the game and the players really like using them. Don't be afraid to learn these. You know, it might make the game like more fun for you. You know, you're doing like really, you know, crazy like timed movements and stuff, and you're practicing a lot of really weird like skills, and it can kind of make the game more interesting. So don't be afraid to learn these. You know, like people in a lot of, especially like more casual first-person shooter franchises, get kind of really weird about these, and they like, you know, call people who use like certain movement techs like tryhards or whatever. Like, you know, don't worry about that. Like, just do what you think is fun. Like, don't worry about what some random stupid idiot like in your game is, you know, fucking screaming at you about. Don't worry about that. Like, do whatever movement tech you think is fun. You know, if if it's, you know, such a glitch, if that movement tech is such a glitch, you know, and looks very very buggy or whatever, that it is pretty much impossible to hit, um, then yeah, maybe that guy might have a point. You know, I'm kind of thinking about like the slither tech from BF4, where you basically just teleport. Um, you know, that's kind of one that's a little bit like cheap to be using. But other than that, like if they can't hit, you know, a character moving across their screen in, you know, a slightly different way than just back and forth, then that's their fault. You know, like plenty of people are really really bad at games, and they're just gonna be bad because they have a bad attitude and they can't learn. So don't worry about what people say whenever you want to learn these movement techs or whatever, or anything advanced. But also don't let it completely dominate your play style. um, if your entire like method of having fun in a first person shooter is just doing a bunch of movement techs and stuff, that's fine. But if your goal is to like be really good at that game, you want to learn how to utilize these in a way that again helps you score kills, not just, you know, you're not playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. You know, you're utilizing these to get an advantage over your opponent essentially in like a gunfight, right? Like you might like jump peek a corner or something to kind of cross the corner faster, and catch them off guard, or like you might slide cancel to kind of like have your character's height at a different, basically have your character model at a different height during the gunfight, you know, so that it kind of throws off their aim. Um, but again, just don't let it completely dominate your entire playstyle. Like there's a lot of people that I'll see in games who literally just spam the fuck out of like any sort of movement tech, and they usually just get stomped because most people can't actually implement like a lot of these kind of advanced movement techs in a lot of games. They can't really implement them very well to their gameplay, and they just like spamming them. And so when they actually try and get in a gunfight, if somebody has decent aim, they usually just get smacked down because it's, you know, like there's a certain extent where you're keeping yourself from shooting the other guy, or you're keeping yourself from winning that gunfight. You're giving yourself such an accuracy penalty that you just can't, you're just never going to win it. So that's all I'll say about that. Just don't let it completely dominate your playstyle. All right, so that's going to be about the end of the video. If you want to leave a comment down below of something you think I missed or something you're confused about, I'd be happy to answer it or go back and forth if there's something you disagree with. That's, you're free to do so. Leave a comment. Other than that, check out some of the people I left in the description. Those are people that I've kind of used over the years to kind of study and try to form my gameplay around. But that's the end of the video, so I will see y'all in the next one.